Part 184. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1831. Zhao Mian was startled, looked at me and asked, "Have you picked it?" I nodded. Zhao Mian's bronze evil ghost mask is simply too eye-catching. I don't really care because I've been exposed to too many things like this. But on the way to Kunlun Mountain, the crowds of people come and go and scare people. If I take it off, wouldn't it be a mess if others see that we look exactly the same? I said a little speechlessly, "Have you never heard of twins? Who is your twin? Don't put too much pressure on yourself. You are lucky to look like me." Zhao Mian said in a whisper. I said speechlessly, "Whatever you say, I'm too lazy to argue with you." Zhao Mian shrugged helplessly, and then took off the bronze mask on his face. I looked at Zhao Mian. Zhao Mian and I are exactly the same. When I look at him, I feel like I'm looking in the mirror, and I can't see any difference between him and me. Then we took a taxi and headed to the train station. What I didn't expect was that both Zhao Mian and Lu Hangxuan had ID cards. Both of them have lived for thousands of years, so the ID cards cannot be used forever. Lu Hangxuan joined the world recently, so her ID card must have been obtained recently. As for Zhao Mian, I don't know. It is not very difficult for Lu Hangxuan and Zhao Mian to apply for ID cards. Because the two of them have lived for thousands of years and have a wide network of contacts, Lu Hangxuan is the current master of Changxian, and she has so many disciples under her command. Any one of them is a reputable person, so it seems normal to find a disciple to establish an identity. We bought the tickets and went straight to Kunlun Mountain. After a day's journey, we finally arrived at Kunlun Mountain. We did not live in the towns near Kunlun Mountain, but bought 2 tents, some food, warm clothes, and climbing tools. Time waits for no one, we must reach the top of Kunlun Mountain as soon as possible. The altitude of Kunlun Mountain is between 5,500 and 6,000 meters, and its width is approximately 130 to 200 kilometers. Not to mention reaching the top of the mountain, I had altitude sickness just after climbing up the mountain. But altitude sickness is not a big deal to me. Because I circulate the breath in my body, I start to adjust my breathing. It was already evening when we arrived at Kunlun Mountain. For safety reasons, we found a safe place to camp. Lu Hangxuan told me that there is no need to hike up the mountain. When she reaches a sparsely populated area, she can transform into her true form and fly up with Zhao Mian and me. Why not turn into his true form now, because there are many mountaineers at this altitude. If Lu Hangxuan transformed into his true form and was seen by them, it would be hard to explain. So, we had to wait until we were in a sparsely populated area before we could move. Due to the relatively high altitude of Kunlun Mountain, you can see snow all year round, especially on the top of the mountain, where permanent snow accumulates all year round. The place where we pitched our tent was also covered with snow. The whistling mountain wind blows wantonly, and the snow is fluttering like goose feathers. Zhao Mian and I share a tent, and Lu Hangxuan shares a tent. Zhao Mian said to me, "Lu Su, since you have made your choice, no matter what happens, you must be firm in your choice. You know what I am referring to." How could I not know that Zhao Mian was referring to Su Tianxian? What he meant by this was to tell me that even if Su Tianxian died, I would continue on. End of chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1832. As long as I am here, Su Tianxian will not die. I said to Zhao Mian. Zhao Mian said seriously, "Nothing is absolute, what if? What if Su Tianxian dies? What should you do?" I instantly fell into silence after hearing Zhao Mian's words. I was silent for a while, then raised my head and said, "If Su Tianxian dies, I will resolve everything and then let her go. I can't accept life without Su Tianxian. Maybe dying for love is the best choice for me. Zhao Mian shrugged and said nothing. I asked Zhao Mian, what about you? After everything is resolved, what are you going to do? Zhao Mian looked at me with a complicated expression and said, do you think people like me can still be alive? I was slightly startled. Zhao Mian slowly stood up, opened the tent and walked out. I followed closely behind. At this moment, the howling wind outside has stopped, and the night sky is cloudless and filled with stars. Zhao Mian stood with his hands behind his back and looked up at the night sky and said faintly, I don't know how long I have lived, and I don't know how many innocent people's blood my hands have been stained with. Everything I do is to achieve that goal. If my goal is achieved, I don't think I will escape God's punishment. A tragic death may be my only fate. Zhao Mian has a clear understanding of himself. He's right. Over the past 1,000 years, countless souls have died at the hands of Zhao Mian. What I heard from his words was to wait until everything is over and then choose death. I don't know how to judge this choice. I asked, have you ever thought about changing your identity and continuing to live? Zhao Mian turned back to look at me and said, change your identity? Will you continue to live in this world with your face? You and I are one, and I am your evil soul. To put it simply, I am your shadow. A shadow can only be a shadow and cannot be separated from the subject. If one day the subject is gone, the shadow will also disappear. I shook my head and replied, you are not my shadow, let alone my evil thoughts. Now, you are a separate person. You have a name, you have your thoughts, and you have your life. So, that seems ridiculous to me. If you have been living for me your whole life, why don't you choose to continue living after I die? Zhao Mian looked at me with complicated eyes. He stared at me for a long time and said, it's too late, everything is too late. My current situation is the same as yours. I don't have much time left. Everything you and I do is racing against time. I saw that Zhao Mian still insisted on his own ideas, and I didn't know how to continue talking to him. Zhao Mian stretched and said, I'm sleepy, go to sleep. After that, Zhao Mian got into the tent, but I was sitting on the snow admiring the snow scene under the moon. Su Tianqian is in Yaokai. I'm wondering if I can go to Yaokai to find her. But then I thought about it, since Su Tianqian didn't ask me to follow, it proved that she didn't need me. She had her own plans. If I showed up, I might interrupt all her arrangements. And I also want to take advantage of this opportunity to complete everything and go to the tomb of the gods alone. In fact, I had no intention of taking Su Tianqian to the tomb of the gods with me from the beginning. Because the tomb of the gods is too dangerous, I might as well die alone, but I can't let Su Tianqian accompany me. End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1833. I didn't know how long I sat on the snow. It wasn't until the wind blew that I slowly stood up and returned to the tent. Before dawn, I, Lu Hangxuan, and Zhao Mian continued on their way. At noon, the three of us finally reached a sparsely populated area. Lu Hangxuan kneaded the formula with both hands and muttered words. After Lu Hangxuan finished reciting the mantra, a dazzling white light emitted from her body. The white light was extremely dazzling. When the white light dissipated, a white dragon appeared in front of Zhao Mian and me. Lu Hangxuan's body is completely white, and her scales are extremely dazzling under the sunlight. I've seen many dragons before. Those dragons may be mighty or domineering, but Lu Hangxuan's body gives me a very gentle feeling. Zhao Mian and I climbed on Lu Hangxuan's back, and then Lu Hangxuan flew directly towards the top of Kunlun Mountain. Clouds and mist were swirling around me, and the icy wind blew so hard that I couldn't keep my eyes open. After about a minute or so, the whistling wind in my ears gradually became weaker. Immediately afterwards, Lu Hangxuan's voice sounded in my ears. Arrive. I opened my eyes and looked around. Surrounded by high mountains, the peaks here tower into the clouds, like giant dragons soaring, and the snow-capped mountains are like white gems embedded in the sky. Standing on the top of Kunlun Mountain, you really have a sense of being at the top of the mountain and seeing all the mountains at a glance. But what I didn't expect was that the environment at the top of Kunlun Mountain was not as bad as I imagined. I originally thought that the top of Kunlun Mountain would be filled with howling winds and heavy snow. But today the sun is shining brightly on the top of Kunlun Mountain, the mountain breeze is weak, and the warm sunshine shining on the body makes people feel warm. Lu Hangxuan returned to her human form and came to my side. She stood beside me for a long time, and then she softly said, "Xiao Su, do it." I looked at Lu Hangxuan, my eyes full of reluctance. Is there no other way? I don't want Lu Hangxuan to die because of me. I don't even want to hold Lu Hangxuan's life in my own hands. If I fail, Lu Hangxuan won't be able to come back. Lu Hangxuan shook her head at me and replied, "Xiao Su, this is the only way. Now is your time to choose." I dare not look at Lu Hangxuan. Because I don't have the face to face her. Without me, Lu Hangxuan would still be the aloof Chang Xian. But now she wants to sacrifice for me. Lu Hangxuan took my hand and said, "Xiao Su, don't hesitate. This is the only way. If you give up, you will no longer have the capital to fight against the gods." I looked up at Lu Hangxuan with red eyes. Good. A pleased smile appeared on Lu Hangxuan's face. I took a deep breath and slowly turned around. I looked at the endless snow-capped mountains and felt extremely solemn. Lu Hangxuan is right, I have no choice but to do this. I sat cross-legged on the ground and slowly closed my eyes. Immediately afterwards, I silently recited the mantra in my mouth and slowly kneaded it with my hands. As I chanted the mantras and kneaded the formulas at a faster pace, my whole body emitted a dazzling golden light. Golden light shines on the entire top of Kunlun, and the entire world changes because of the golden light. I opened my eyes suddenly and stood up slowly. I took a deep breath and shouted loudly, "The sky is above. The thick soil is the proof. Lu Su. I am here to use my life as bait today. Suppress the luck of the human race. Gather the aura of heaven and earth. When the spiritual energy enters the body, I, Lu Suding, will do my best to cut off the yin and yang, block the gods, and protect China's peace of mind for eternity. Guard the prosperity of the human race. If you swear this, heaven and earth will not tolerate it, and your soul will be scattered." End of this chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1834. After Lu Hangxuan finished speaking, she turned around and walked towards the cliff. I looked at her leaving back and couldn't help but step forward and shouted, "Sister Hangxuan." Lu Hangxuan stopped and looked back at me. I said to Lu Hangxuan in a hoarse and trembling voice, "Don't worry, I won't let you die. I will survive and help you reunite your body and soul, you must wait for me." Lu Hangxuan smiled brightly at me and said, "Okay, I'll wait for you." I waved to Lu Hangxuan and choked with sobs, "Goodbye. Goodbye." As soon as she finished speaking, Lu Hangxuan transformed into her real body and flew towards the sky. I stared blankly at the snow-white dragon under the night sky. She soars in the sky and hovers on the mountain tops. Against the backdrop of the night, she looked so dreamy and stunning. But in the end, the snow-white dragon merged into the world. At this time, a white bead slowly floated towards me. I quickly reached out to pick it up. This bead is completely transparent and exudes dazzling white light. It is cold and soft in your hand. I stared blankly at the beads in my hand, and it wasn't until Zhao Mian spoke that I came back to my senses. "Keep her inner elixir well, and within half a year, you can use magic to extract her soul, flesh, and blood from the dragon veins, and then you can reunite her soul and body. I put the beads away, looked at Zhao Mian, and said, let's go. Zhao Mian nodded. Afterwards, Zhao Mian and I took advantage of the darkness and walked down the mountain. Halfway through, Zhao Mian suggested stopping to rest and continue walking until dawn. I did not refuse Zhao Mian's request. I sat cross-legged in the tent and carefully felt the energy of heaven and earth and the energy of the dragon in my body. These two forces are too powerful, and it may take some time to completely absorb them. I slowly exhaled a breath and asked Zhao Mian, where are we going next? Zhao Mian replied, do you still remember the tomb where you first saw Huo Qubing? I was slightly startled, nodded, and said, remember. Zhao Mian continued, the purpose of our trip is there. There is a coffin called the blood coffin. That coffin can allow us both to enter the 8th level of the sky coffin. I was slightly startled and asked, is there this coffin in that tomb? Why didn't I notice it? Zhao Mian chuckled and said, I hid him, of course you won't notice. I was speechless. What's there to hide in this coffin? There is indeed nothing to hide, but I couldn't let you know about the coffin at that time because the time was not ripe. Now that the time is ripe, it shouldn't be too difficult to deal with Huo Qubing with your current strength. After Pajingxing returns to the palace, you can concentrate on retreating on the 8th floor of the coffin. I nodded. Zhao Mian looked me up and down and asked, are your left arm and eye useless? Well, it's useless. Not only my left arm and eye, but my right eye has also started to blur. Zhao Mian pondered for a moment and said, this is not possible, you are disabled before entering the tomb of the gods. What should you do if you enter the tomb of the gods? I sighed slightly and said, there is nothing we can do about this. Zhao Mian smiled at me and said, don't worry, there will be a road from the car to the mountain, and from the bridge to the bow of the ship, it will be straight. When the critical moment comes, your left hand and left eye will naturally recover. End of this chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1835. I frowned and asked, what riddle are you trying to solve again? Zhao Mian said mysteriously, you will know when the time comes. I rolled my eyes. TCH, I'm too lazy to argue with you. Let's take a short rest. When we have enough rest, we will continue on our way. With that, I got into my sleeping bag and started to sleep. Zhao Mian muttered something in a low voice. Although I didn't hear clearly, I knew he was talking about me. He also got into his sleeping bag. After a while, I heard Zhao Mian snoring. I'm really speechless. I'm still snoring even though I'm sleeping. How can I rest like this? However, I quickly fell asleep while looking at the roof of the tent. I didn't sleep well this time. I haven't had a good night's sleep recently. Usually I wake up in the middle of the night, or I just can't sleep. So, this time I woke up early. I woke up Zhao Mian and continued on my way. At noon, Zhao Mian and I went down the mountain. After going down the mountain, we took the bus to the train station and then took the train back to Tianfu City. After returning to Tianfu City, I didn't dare to neglect and rushed towards the tomb as soon as possible. At noon on the third day, Zhao Mian and I successfully arrived at the tomb. Entering the tomb passage, I did not take the path I took when I first came here. Instead, Zhao Mian took me along the tomb passage. After crawling in the tomb passage for about 10 minutes, Zhao Mian and I came to a tomb chamber. The tomb is not big, with a blood-red coffin placed in the middle. There is nothing in this tomb except this coffin, and even the tombstone is extremely flat. Zhao Mian and I came to the Swo coffin. Zhao Mian pointed at the blood martial coffin and said, you enter first, and then I'll go in. I was slightly startled and asked, are you going with me too? Otherwise, why would I bring you here? Zhao Mian replied. I was speechless for a moment and then rolled into the coffin. Zhao Mian slowly closed the coffin lid. Of course, Zhao Mian did not close it completely, but left a gap through which he could get in. Go, go, go. Point over there, give me some space. Zhao Mian came in and said to me. Brother, the coffin is only so big, how can I give you room? I couldn't help but say. Zhao Mian didn't answer me. He stretched out his hand to close the coffin lid, and then said to me, just lie on your side and I will hold you. Damn it! Can you please stop doing this kind of thing? Don't you feel weird that we two gentlemen are lying in a coffin hugging each other? Hey, hey, what's weird about that? We are one, what's going to happen if we hug each other? Zhao Mian's mouth can be really poisonous sometimes. He continued, what? Do you have to hold Su Tianqian to feel comfortable? I can't do it. Yes, yes. Shut up. I said to Zhao Mian. Zhao Mian didn't say anything to me and just hugged me from behind. Then, we both fell into silence. Time passes minute by minute. I don't know how long it took, but the whole coffin suddenly shook. Immediately afterwards, a feeling of weightlessness came over me, which felt like bungee jumping. But compared to bungee jumping, what I feel now is more terrifying. Because you know when to stop bungee jumping, but what about me? It just fell straight down, surrounded by endless darkness, with no end at all. The feeling of weightlessness was accompanied by a feeling of dizziness. I was so tortured by these two feelings that I finally passed out without being able to hold on. End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1836. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I woke up again, I just felt dizzy. I stretched out my hand to rub my swollen head, but my vision was still blurry. I sat on the ground and calmed down for a long time before I recovered. I struggled to stand up and began to look around, taking in my current environment. The whole world was gray, and there were gray ashes floating in the air. The scene in front of me gave me the feeling of watching a black and white TV. There is no color at all wherever the eyes can see, only darkness, grayness, and numbness. Where is Zhao Mian? Where did Zhao Mian go? I started looking for Zhao Mian. I searched all around and couldn't find it. Zhao Mian entered the 8th floor of the Sky Coffin with me, but now he was not beside me. There are two reasons for this. The first one, Zhao Mian was teleported to another location. The second one, Zhao Mian woke up before me and slipped away. I sighed slightly. No matter what the situation was, it was not that important to me. I don't need to worry about Zhao Mian's whereabouts. Zhao Mian's strength is a mystery, and there will be no danger in the Sky Coffin. What I have to do now is to find Huo Qubing and fulfill the original agreement. Where I am now is a barren mountain, with nothing around except dry trees. I pondered for a moment, then found a room and started walking. Each floor of the Sky Coffin is a small world. The world is big, and what I have seen before is just the tip of the iceberg. Moreover, there will be various monsters in each layer of the Sky Coffin. I don't know what is sealed on the 8th layer, but with my current strength, I will not be particularly embarrassed to deal with any monsters and monsters. I don't know how long I've been walking, but the scene around me still hasn't changed. This made me wonder if I had gone astray. As soon as I had this idea, several bright lights suddenly appeared not far away. Bright light? I was slightly startled and hurried towards the direction of the light. When I got closer to the light, I realized that the light was actually the light reflected from long swords. In front of me is an endless wilderness. There are countless long swords stuck in the wilderness. Some of these long swords are brand new, and some are in dilapidated condition. They are stuck in the ground in random directions, like lonely and desolate tombs. How come there is such a large sword tomb here? No, there are more than just swords here. The entire huge wilderness is filled with not only swords, but also spears, halberds, shields, bows and arrows. Could it be that this is an ancient battlefield? I reached out and pulled out a long sword. I looked at this long sword carefully. I can't tell the age of this long sword. However, there seemed to be blood stains on the sword that had not yet dried. What is going on the 8th floor of the coffin today? Just when I was confused, I suddenly felt something scratched my right foot. I frowned and looked towards my right foot. I saw a withered hand stretching out from the ground and grabbing my ankle. I pulled my right foot back hard, but the withered hand held it tightly. I squeezed the secret with one hand, and blue thunder and lightning emerged around me. The withered hand quickly retracted as if it was electrocuted. I quickly retreated and distanced myself from the weapon stuck on the ground. My steps were steely, and I heard the sound of metal friction in the air. I saw that the weapons stuck on the ground were shaking slightly. End of chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1837. The trembling of the weapons became louder and louder, and then I saw withered hands stretching out from the ground. He grabbed the ground with his withered hands and crawled forward. Within a moment, countless ancient soldiers wearing armor crawled out of the ground. The scene in front of me reminded me of the scene in the zombie movie where the loser breaks out of the grave. Most of the armor on these ancient soldiers had been rotted away. Not only the armor on their bodies, but also the bodies of these soldiers were rotten to the point of disgrace. Some soldiers have only half their bodies left, some have no heads, and some even have only white bones left. Even so, these soldiers did not die. I can confirm that these soldiers are not ghosts or zombies, they are the living dead. These living dead soldiers slowly pulled out their weapons stuck on the ground and then all turned their heads to look at me. Their eyes flashed with scarlet blood. I frowned. It seemed that I was going to have to deal with these living dead before I found Huo Kyubing. I stared at these living dead with vigilance. The next second, these living dead rushed towards me like wild beasts. Their speed was extremely fast, and they were in front of me in the blink of an eye. I held my right hand in the air, and Jingxiao appeared in my hand. When I just held Jingxiao, a living dead person had already arrived in front of me. I saw the living dead man raising the halberd in his hand and hitting me hard. I quickly put Jingxiao above my head to resist. Just listen to a clang. The living dead are extremely powerful, and this blow actually made me numb. Even the ground beneath his feet has sunk a bit. Before I could react, several more living dead came to me. They waved their weapons and attacked me without any hesitation. My expression condensed, and dazzling white light emitted from my whole body. Pure lotus protected my body, and the attacks of these living dead were immediately defeated. I took this opportunity to swing my sword at the living dead in front of me. I originally thought that this one should be easy to kill, but what I never expected was that although the body of the living dead was rotting, its skin was as hard as steel. My blow didn't cause any damage to it. Since physical skills alone are not enough, then you can only use magic. I squeezed the secret with one hand, and with a slight breath, blue lightning burst out from the palm of my hand, and then attached to Jingxiao at an extremely fast speed. I raised my eyebrows and struck at the living dead in front of me again. Jingxiao drew a perfect arc in the air. It struck the living dead man firmly. When Jingxiao touches the living dead, he directly cuts it in half, and the blue lightning swallows the living dead like a tide. In one breath, the living dead man was chopped into ashes by me. I originally thought that this living dead man would not stir up trouble. The next moment, something shocking happened to me. I saw the weapon that the living dead had just held fall to the ground. Immediately afterwards, a withered hand stretched out from the ground again, and after a while, another living dead climbed up from the ground. The sight of the living dead crawling out of the ground wasn't enough to shock me. What shocked me was that the living dead man crawling out in front of me looked exactly the same as the living dead man I just killed. Even the aura exuding from this living dead man is exactly the same as the one just now. End of chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1838. How is this going? Didn't I just kill this living dead? Why does it appear again now? I still haven't figured out what's going on. The living dead around me came towards me like a tide. I suddenly took a step forward, and blue thunder and lightning spread around me at lightning speed. The streaks of thunder and lightning were like wild beasts, engulfing all the living dead near the border in an instant. When the thunder and lightning dissipated, I looked around. There was no living dead around, only the weapons fell to the ground. Although these living dead have been dealt with, my nerves have not relaxed. Because there were withered hands stretched out from the ground, and within a moment, the living dead that I had just killed crawled out of the soil again. They picked up their weapons off the ground and came at me like they were doing it for the first time. I once again used my methods to deal with these living dead. There are so many living dead that they are densely packed as far as the eye can see. I just used the thunder method, but the thunder method didn't work, so I used the talisman. The condition of the talisman was the same as that of the thunder method, which could kill the living dead, but after a while these living dead crawled out of the soil again. After that, I used all the means I could, including soul-stealing bloody hands, sea of ghosts, karmic fire. I used all the means I could. But no matter what method I use, these living dead will crawl out of the ground. I have never encountered this situation. I searched my memory and found no information about these living dead. Although I captured these guys, I can't search the memories of that life. Just when my head was getting bigger, a living dead man suddenly bumped into me, raised the long knife in his hand and chopped it down at me. My expression hardened. I took out the immortal killing sword directly from the sword box and slashed at the living dead. When the two swords collided, I heard a clang, and the long sword in the hand of the living dead was cut off by me. When the sword in the hand of the living dead was cut off, the living dead turned into flying ashes and disappeared between heaven and earth. I seemed to understand something when I saw this scene. The reason why these living dead cannot be killed is because their souls are not in their bodies, but in those weapons. After a person dies, the soul will go to the underworld for reincarnation, but there is one exception, that is, the person has a strong obsession before death. The ancients believed that obsession is a manifestation of the soul. Obsession is an unshakable thought caused by persistence. Under strong obsession, the soul of the deceased will attach itself to the person or object he cared about most during his lifetime. Of course, there are also people who refuse to be reincarnated because of their obsessions, and stay with the person they care about, even if they cannot meet each other. If your obsession is too deep, you will become an inner demon, destroying yourself or others. If you let go of your obsession, you will be kind to yourself. Cling to one thought, be trapped in one thought, let go of one thought, and feel at ease. I just cut off the long sword and cut off the obsession of the living dead. However, this approach does not help these living dead to be freed, but allows the living dead to forcibly give up their obsession and leave the world. Forcibly cutting off the obsession is equivalent to killing 3 souls and 7 souls. In this way, these living dead will never have the chance to be reincarnated. I looked at the living dead around me. I didn't understand what their obsession was and why they persisted in existing in the world and went against the will of heaven. End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 1839. These living dead are like unconscious puppets. Keep attacking me. After learning the truth about the existence of these living dead, I did not exterminate them all. These living dead pose no threat to me. It's just that there are too many and it's troublesome. Instead of exterminating these living dead, it would be better to find ways to help them escape. In this way, I can also gain some merit. If there is no way to help them escape, I can only destroy them. But in order to free these living dead, I must know what the obsession is in their hearts. This is a very troublesome thing for me. I tried to communicate with them, but no matter how much I asked, they seemed to be mute and said nothing. I want to help them out, but the difficulty is that I can't communicate. It's not that I'm heartless, it's just that I can't communicate. Since I can't communicate, I don't want this merit. What's more, I have very important things to do here, so I can't waste time on these living dead. Thinking of this, I no longer hesitate. I kneaded the formula with one hand and recited the mantra silently in my heart. The next second, the center of my eyebrows emitted a dazzling golden light. Immediately afterwards, countless heavenly secrets flew out from between my eyebrows. How many heavenly secrets can be cast is closely related to the behavior of the user of the heavenly secrets. Now that my Taoism is very high, the number of heavenly secrets that I can display is terrifying to the extreme. I now intend to directly destroy the weapons in the hands of these living dead. As long as I destroy the weapons in their hands, their souls will be gone. Just when I want to kill all these living dead, a figure suddenly appeared in front of me. When I saw the person coming, I was slightly startled. Huo Qubing. Huo Qubing said to me with a solemn expression, "Come with me." After that, Huo Qubing pulled me away without any explanation. The living dead behind him did not come after him. I originally wanted to stop, but Huo Qubing said coldly, "Don't stop, they are still there." Still there? I was slightly startled, and then I suddenly found that the ground under my feet suddenly became soft, and then a long sword emerged from the ground. Fortunately, I hid quickly. If I had been slower, the soles of my feet would have been pierced by this sword. How is this going? Huo Qubing and I have run so far, how can these living dead catch up? Is it possible that they can teleport? Not allowing me to think too much, Huo Qubing urged from the side, "It's not suitable to stay here for a long time, let's leave as soon as possible." I saw Huo Qubing's expression was so serious. I didn't say anything at the moment and followed Huo Qubing for who knows how far away. Later, Huo Qubing took me to a cave, and Huo Qubing and I walked into the cave. I sat on the ground gasping for air. Huo Qubing stood at the entrance of the cave and looked around. After looking around for a long time, he turned towards me and said, "It's okay, they can't chase me for the time being." I looked at Huo Qubing and asked, "Why don't you let me destroy them?" Huo Qubing shook his head and said, "They can't be killed." I was startled and asked, "Why?" Huo Qubing looked at me seriously and said, "The 8th level of the sky coffin is composed of obsessions. In other words, they are the fundamental force that maintains the 8th level of the sky coffin. Once they are destroyed, the entire 8th level of the sky coffin will be destroyed, collapse." End of chapter. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanba. Chapter 1840. Huo Qubing's words made me realize a loophole. I asked, "Then let me tell you this, I can't destroy them, nor can I help them escape. As long as the obsession is gone, the coffin will collapse." Huo Qubing shook his head at me and replied, "Help them free themselves from the 8th floor of the coffin, which will prevent it from collapsing." "Why?" I asked doubtfully. Huo Qubing organized his speech and said, "Those guys you just met are the souls of those who died in ancient times and even modern times. They exist here because of the obsession in their hearts. What you just saw is only a small part of them. In fact, there are so many of these dead souls that it is impossible to count them. The sky coffin is a seal for them, but they have been sealed here for a long time, and their obsessive souls have long been integrated with the seal. If you kill them by force, the seal will be damaged. However, when they let go of their obsession, their autonomous consciousness will be restored, and then they will separate their souls from the seal. In this way, if the seal is not destroyed, this layer will naturally not collapse. I nodded. I didn't expect that the 8th layer of the sky coffin actually sealed the souls of those who died in battle. The number of dead souls from ancient times to the present is terrifying even if you don't think about it. I pondered for a moment and then asked Huokyubing, the reason why you came to the coffin in advance is because you want to help these dead souls escape. Huokyubing nodded and said, yes, this is indeed the purpose of my coming here. There are some of my former subordinates here who died and went to the underworld, but if they were too obsessed before they died, their souls would not be reincarnated. I couldn't bear to see them continue to suffer here, so I came to find a way to free them. I looked at Huokyubing and said with a smile, it seems that the agreement between you and me will be postponed for a while. Huokyubing was startled and asked, promise? Do you think you have what it takes to defeat me now? I stood up and said firmly, of course, otherwise I wouldn't be here. Huokyubing looked me up and down, and then said, your left eye and left hand are already disabled. How dare you challenge me in your condition? I stretched out my right hand and touched my left hand and said, it doesn't matter. If I can defeat you, we will see the truth under our hands. Huokyubing looked at me with a hint of approval in his eyes. He suddenly thought of something and asked, by the way, how is Hwashiu doing lately? When I heard the word Hwashiu, my expression froze. After hesitating for a while, I said in a hoarse voice, she is dead. As soon as these words came out, Huokyubing froze on the spot. He was stunned for a while, and then asked, she is a zombie, how could she die suddenly? Huokyubing suddenly looked back at me and asked with a cold expression, did you fail to protect her? I nodded. Huokyubing grabbed my collar and said angrily, Lusu, I really misjudged you. Hwashiu has waited 1,000 years to meet you. You didn't protect him. Are you still worthy of being his brother? I didn't speak. Huokyubing looked at me coldly. I could feel that he was suppressing the anger in his heart. I originally thought Huokyubing would beat me up, but in fact he didn't. He let go of his hand on my neck and sat aside with a disappointed expression. End of chapter.